Hi, I'm author Elizabeth Ann West. Welcome to my reading of For the Love of a Bennet, and All Go to Brighton, Pride and Prejudice variation. For the Love of a Bennet, it's my 23rd title published in the genre of derivative fiction from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, which also happens to be my favorite genre to read. I originally began writing this story back in the spring of 2019, and with a group of authors, we planned this idea of everyone writing a variation that takes place around when Lydia goes to Brighton with the militia in the original story. I did warn them in advance I am not very good at group projects, so as a result, they all published before I did. But finally, 3 years later, my book is finished and released on all vendors, including paperback, Amazon, Apple, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, and soon it'll be up on smaller vendors as well. The other books in this project are Mr. Darcy's Seaside Romance by Violet King, Mr. Darcy Goes to Brighton by Bella Breen, and A Secret Suitor by Allison Smith. I highly recommend you check out all of those books, and I will put links to them down in the description. So according to the timeline that places Pride and Prejudice in 1812, Lydia is invited in the middle of May by the Forsters and leaves sometime at the beginning of June. It's canon that Lydia ran off with Mr. Wickham at the end of July, beginning of August, which in the original you'll remember that is when Elizabeth Bennet is visiting Pemberley with her aunt and Uncle Gardner. Now, the couple was not found in London, according to canon, until the middle of August, and they aren't forced to marry until the end of August, again by the timeline for 1812. So this means that Lydia and Mr. Wickham were on the run for about a month. One delight of mine, as a fan of Austen's work, is that she was a contemporary writer, and that means things not explicitly written on the page, but hinted at, or more importantly, things left out, would have a meaning to her contemporary readers, a meaning that's often lost today on our modern sensibilities. So here's some of the biggest questions I have developed while writing this story, and let me know in the comments if you've ever wondered some of these things yourself. Why didn't Lieutenant George Wickham get any kind of trouble or court-martialed for just running away from the militia? And why did Colonel Forster, the leader of the militia, able to just run to London, send an express to Hertfordshire, and then he also went to Longbourn himself, according to canon? And finally, how did Mr. Wickham get the money to just jet off to London? We know this man was not good with funds. Now, there are a few reasons why Mr. Wickham might not have been prosecuted. And a lot of times we like to explain things away in the fandom as, well, Mr. Darcy just paid for it all. And I agree to a point that money speaks the loudest, but I imagine that contemporaries of Austen who would have known that the militia is more or less only policing a policing force in the village, and Brighton was a haven for smuggling. I mean, the whole town was practically built by a vintner, which is a wine merchant, and wait for it, his friend the watchmaker. Yeah, I don't think they were doing anything illegal at all. Do you? So I believe it plausible that Wickham has fallen into league with some smugglers and has had his pockets lined. And for a good time, not a long time. And maybe for good measure, he had some dirt on Colonel Forster. So the end of this story changed a dozen times on me. Originally, I so badly wanted to put a scene in there where Mr. Darcy had to dress up as a woman for some reason. I'll save that for another story. And I know what you're thinking. Elizabeth, Jane Austen never wrote men dressing up in women's clothing. That would never have happened back then. To which I point you to Volume 2, Chapter 16, where Lydia meets Jane and Lizzie on their way back from London, and she recounts a good piece of fun the other day at Colonel Forster's, where another officer, Chamberlain, was dressed in Aunt Philip's gown, and Wickham, Denny, and Pratt thought he was a lady until they were all laughing. Sadly, there's no cross-dressing in For the Love of a Bennet. But the story is a dramatic tale of two very different sisters enjoying a summer during the Regency in Brighton. I hope you enjoy reading the chapters or listening to me reading them, though I will confess now, I am not a professional voice actor, and I'm beginning this project of reading my chapters on YouTube for what Lydia herself says, a good piece of fun. Thank you for listening, and I hope you'll subscribe and follow along.